We are talking about serving today, and specifically talking about serving in the small, normal, everyday kinds of ways. The kinds of ways we've already had ample opportunity this morning to practice and to embody. But talking about serving or being served, it might include some vulnerability. It might be personal. And so I thought I would just start off our time together this morning by leading by example, talking about some personal things. When I got married, I learned a lot of things about myself. Like a lot of things about myself. And as I've reflected on the things I've learned over the years, one of the things that I realized is that most of the things I've learned about myself have been the little things about me that I never knew I did. Because the big things, like the really big things, like my big quirks or my big personality flaws, my big struggles, I already knew all those. Like I didn't need to be married to know that biting my nails is a terrible and gross habit. Don't judge me, please, okay? I had a younger sister who told me that. I didn't need to be married to know that big habit was a gross thing. It's the little things that were revealed. In fact, when it comes to nearly every relationship, whether it be with a spouse or a friend or a partner, they kind of rise and fall on the little things. It's the little things that stack up to lead to big wins, and it's the little things that stack up to lead to big challenges. So here's some of the little things I've learned about myself. The first one, Shell says it's bewildering. I say it's a special talent. It's how good I am at stewarding our groceries. And what I mean, of course, by that is I am really good at leaving a tiny amount of milk in the milk jug. Like a tiny amount. Shell's like, just put it in the cereal. I'm like, but then the ratio's off. Like, there's no point leaving that. That's what I do. Or I'll like cut up like peppers for the kids' lunches, and I'll leave like one wedge in the fridge, in the Tupperware containers. Like, just put it in a kid's lunch. And I'm like, but then they're not the same amount. And I want Charlotte and Alex to have the same amount. It doesn't make sense. Another little thing I've learned is how important it is to me that the toilet roll goes on the right way. And it's obviously supposed to be bangs, not a mullet, right? The toilet goes to the front, not the back. I saw a thumb up, thank you. It's important. If you're like, why is he talking about toilet paper? That's not even the most juvenile thing I'm gonna say this morning in my sermon. It gets worse. You have to wait a bit though. I also learned how important a really tight bed sheet is to me. And I learned that because my beloved wife, Chelsea, the first thing she does if we're in like a hotel room or anywhere where the bed is made up is she goes in and she rips it up. I'm like, what are you doing? That's the best part. I want to feel like I'm getting pinned. I could tell you so many things, little things that I didn't even know were important to me that were brought up in the context of relationship. It's not just marriage, though, these little things. Like Alex Ovechkin isn't potentially beating Gretzky's goal record today because he decided this year, it's time to be awesome. It's been well over 800 little things stacking up that led to today. And it wasn't even just in the NHL. It was little choices that were made decades and decades ago. But here's the thing. Relationships with anyone rise and fall on the little things. It's the little things that make all the difference. And if that's true in the closest relationships of our lives, how much more true can that be for the people we struggle to be around? The people that we might have a hard time serving or loving. And so today we're talking about serving in the little ways with the little things, and we're learning from Jesus. In John chapter 13, starting with verse 1, we read this. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave the world and go to the Father. So the first thing we're told, it was just before the Passover festival, which means this passage only makes sense the way it's meant to be read if we read it in the shadow of the cross. This whole moment that we're about to make our way through was just before the Passover festival. That is to say, just before the cross. And so as we read John 13, it should feel as if there's like a dramatic underscore where the intensity is picking up. You know when you watch a movie and like the heartbeat is like bump, 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 bump. And then it gets more and more intense, or like the music crescendos in intensity. The heat is increasing in John chapter 13. It should feel a little more heavy. We're reading this in the shadow of the cross. And next we read, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. In that one part of verse 1, we see the word love twice. And I just want us to notice that the closer we get to the cross in the Gospel of John, the more love becomes the focus. The closer we get to the cross, the more love becomes the focus. In the opening 12 chapters, 30-something years of Jesus' life, the Greek word for love that's used right there in John 13, it's only used 6 times in those 12 chapters. But now that Jesus is in the shadow of the cross, in the upper room with his disciples, the usage of love goes up 5 times. It's so prevalent. Because John wants us to know as we read this moment in the life of Jesus and his disciples, as we get to the epicenter of why Jesus came, the escalation of love is exponential. So as we read John 13 here, we should do it in the shadow of the cross, knowing that the focus of love is increasing more and more. John 13. Verse 2, it says this. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Then Lord, Simon Peter replied, "Not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, "Not everyone was clean." So the famous Last Supper meal is happening here. Perhaps you've seen a painting of this moment from Da Vinci. There's all kinds of different, that's a pretty famous telling of this moment. Every gospel talks about the upper room. Every gospel talks about what's happening in this moment, this Last Supper. But the first thing that John 13 focuses on, that we should just identify in the passage here, is it says that the devil prompted Judas to betray Jesus. But notice the devil prompted Judas. The devil didn't force Judas, because the devil can't force Judas. One person translated this passage by saying Judas allowed the devil's whispers to take hold in his heart. And I just want to highlight that at the front, because we should be really attentive to the voices that we're listening to. And the Bible gives an astonishing amount of credit to humanity to make choices, God has given us the capacity to make choices, and we are responsible for the consequences of that capacity that's been given to us. And the devil does seek to whisper things that lead to death and betrayal, to destruction, and to the choking out of our lives. But we don't have to listen to those whispers. We can listen to the still small voice of God. So don't let the whispers take hold in our heart. We're told that Jesus knew Judas had betrayed him. Jesus knew it was time for him to return, and Jesus knew that all power had been given to him. So what does he do? He gets up to serve. It says Jesus knew all power had been given to him. So, I think like the most powerful so in the Bible. So he got up to serve. I like to imagine the scene of John chapter 13. First off, their tables were nothing like Da Vinci's painting. Nothing like it. Have you seen the joke about the upper room dinner where like the disciples and Jesus walk in like, hey, we need a table for 26? And they're like, what? It's like, well, we're all gonna sit on the same side of the table, so it needs to be twice as big. Their tables were nothing like Da Vinci's table. Their tables would have been really low to the ground. They reclined around them. They didn't sit on chairs around them. So it's Jesus and his 12 disciples reclining on the table, reclining around the table. And the fact that there was 13 men there means that there was 26 feet there. So there's 26 feet reclining around the table. And so it was a common practice, or perhaps you could say a common courtesy, that you would wash your feet prior to the meal because you're all laying right beside the people beside you. And I've been to Israel at Passover time, and guess what? Unlike Calgary, there's no snow on the ground. Like there are places in the world that don't have snow on the ground in April. We don't live there, but they exist. In Israel at Passover time, it's hot. I looked up their weather forecast, and it's supposed to get into the 30s this week. It's hot there. It's warm. And newsflash, they didn't have cars to get around. They didn't have paved roads to walk on. And they walked everywhere. And if they weren't walking, they were on animals to get around. So there was dirt on the roads and stone, and there was a whole lot of animals. And I can't say this in a way that doesn't feel childish, but all these animals that were helping them get around, they go to the bathroom unpredictably. And this was Passover time, which means there were thousands of visitors with their many, many, many accompanying animals. And they brought with them even more than just transportation animals, but sacrificial animals. I heard this week there would have been something like 200,000 sheep in Jerusalem at this time of year. Do you see the picture? It is super hot. They're walking around everywhere. It's super dirty, it's super dusty, and it's super poopy. There, that's the most juvenile thing I have ever said while preaching. What's the point? These men had been walking around for hours, and their feet would have been super everything, including super stinky. You should wash your feet before laying down right beside someone who's eating. It's a common courtesy. But the thing was that feet were seen as really offensive parts of the body. And so rooms that were available for rent or people would often have hired the lowest of the low slave to come and wash your feet. It wasn't even the job for the common servant. It was for the lowest of the low slave to wash your feet. Except for whatever reason, in John 13, in the room they were in, there was no one there to wash their feet. And so it's Jesus and his disciples with 26 super everything feet, and the meal, we're told, has already begun. And it's at this point where Jesus gets up as the meal's happening. And when you read through John 13, you read Jesus gets up, and then it's like everything slows down in the passage. in the shadow of the cross, with the intensity picking up, Jesus gets up from his meal. And I imagine the disciples thinking, oh, he probably needs to get a refill of something. We're told Jesus gets up, and then John gives us some remarkable details. And like slowly and methodically tells us what happened. Jesus gets up. And he takes off his outer clothing until he's left in the uniform that a slave would have been wearing. So he's wearing the uniform of a slave, and then it says he wraps a towel around his waist. And then he picks up some water and he pours it into a basin. And when you read this passage, it just feels vivid and dramatic, like a really slow portrayal, like moment by moment, frame by frame, every detail is communicated. It's methodical. And then Jesus starts to move to his disciples one by one. And he gets down to the first disciple. It's probably John, because we're told in a couple of verses John would rest against him. So Jesus gets down and, John, I love you. And he just starts to wash his feet. And then he gets to the next disciple. Maybe it's James, and just starts to wash his feet. Then he gets to the next one. Maybe it's Bartholomew. Hey, Bartholomew, it's been a long day. Starts to wash his feet. And he goes around one by one, disciple by disciple. And the hands that were hours away from being pierced on a Roman cross were scraping away dirt and animal droppings from the feet of the disciples, one by one. Eventually, we're told he comes to Peter, and Peter's like, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And that kind of picture, Jesus like, no, Peter, just everyone else. Of course I'm washing your feet too, Peter. And Peter's like, no, Jesus, you can't wash my feet. You can't do that. You're the Lord. You're too good for that. And we just see this reality, like Peter is humble enough to know that what Jesus was doing was incongruent with what his perception of what the Messiah should be doing. But Peter is proud enough to tell Jesus what to do. Humble enough to know, you shouldn't be doing this, Jesus, but proud enough to say, but you should be doing this. And I just want to take a moment to step back from the upper room here and look at the big picture of that day and Peter. Because in the upper room, Peter was not willing to let Jesus touch his feet. But a few hours later, in the garden, Peter would swing a sword and try to kill one of the people who was there to arrest Jesus. Which just shows us Peter was willing to fight for Jesus, but he wasn't willing to let Jesus have access to the embarrassing parts of his body. He was willing to go to battle for Jesus, but he didn't want to let Jesus serve him in the less than parts of his life. And we can scoff all we want at Peter, but I do wonder how much like Peter we are. Like, well, Kyle, I'd let Jesus wash my feet. I for sure would let him do that. It's like, maybe. But how often do you let Jesus have access to the most intimate, dark, embarrassing parts of your life? The parts that you want to try and hide or cover up. We may feel eager to fight for Jesus, but are we willing to let him address the uncomfortable parts of our lives? Because I think if we're honest, sometimes we'll be like, Jesus, I will fight for you. Just don't tell me how to live. Or like, Jesus, I'll post about you online. Just don't tell me what to watch online. Look, I'm posting about you. Just don't tell me what to do. I'll fight for you, Jesus. I'll fight for you. Just don't address my secret addiction. But I'll fight for you. I'll be vocal for you. Just don't call me on my attitude. I'll fight for you, but I don't want to confess that I lied or that I cheated. I'll fight for you, but don't tell me what to do with my money and where to give it, what to spend it on. I'll fight for you, but don't tell me who I can and should forgive in my life that's hurt me. How often are we like Peter, where we're willing to fight for him, but we don't want him to get too close to the parts of our lives that we try to hide, the parts of our lives that we think stink? William Temple wrote that humility does not begin with the giving of service. Humility begins with receiving service. How often are we willing to humble ourselves to let Jesus address in our lives what we may be trying to hide? How much like Peter are we? The text jumps from Peter back to Judas, and I find the treatment of Peter and Judas beautiful. We're told Jesus knew that Judas had betrayed him, and yet we're told also that Jesus washed all the disciples' feet, including Judas. A few verses later, Jesus is going to acknowledge, hey, look, someone in here is going to betray me. And the disciples are like, who? Who, Lord? Who is it? Which is to say, they don't know who it is. Which means the way that Jesus washed Judas's feet and was treating him in that meal was no different. Like, could you imagine if when Jesus is going around to wash all of their feet, he's washing them slowly, methodically, looking at them, talking with them as he's serving them. And then he gets to Judas and he's just like, and then he goes on to the next disciple and gives him like everyone would be like, yo, what did Judas do? And then an hour later, Jesus like, someone in here betrayed me. All 11 are going to be like, obviously it's Judas. Did you see how you washed his feet? That never happened. Because Jesus treated them all the same. Treated them all equally. And Jesus didn't treat Judas any different, even though he knew Judas had betrayed him. Like, it's staggering to me that night when Judas walked into the garden leading the opposition to arrest Jesus, that his feet were still clean from Jesus washing them. Jesus knew he was going to betray him, and yet he still served him. We're never more like Jesus than when we choose to serve those who don't deserve it. Maybe those who have betrayed us. Thomas Merton once remarked that our job is to love others without stopping to inquire whether or not they are worthy of it. Our job is to serve, whether they deserve it or not. We follow the example of Jesus, and Jesus serves. Next, in this moment, we read, when Jesus had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Here's what Jesus is showing us, showing his disciples, showing us today. Serving is never beneath us. Serving is never beneath us. It doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are, how powerful you are, how weak you are, how influential, how wealthy, how poor, how popular, how many employees you may have, wherever you may be on an org chart, you can be a leader, you can have a leader. Serving is never beneath you. And our call to serve is not tied to our job title or our station in life. Those who follow Jesus are called to serve. And there is not one place to serve, one role to serve, and that is beneath the follower of Jesus, because nothing was below Jesus. Jesus came and washed the dirt that he made humanity out of off his disciples' feet. He served. So who can you serve? What areas in your life can you serve in? What roles are there that you might see on a daily basis or a weekly basis where you're like, I don't want to do that. Someone else will do that. What ways can you serve? Or maybe if we even start before that, we should be asking ourselves, what are the things that make it hard for us to serve? What gets in the way from us serving? Is it pride? Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to clean that toilet. That's not worth my time. I have too much to do. Is it misaligned relationship with money? It's like, serving in that way is not worth my time. Is it because of a role? It's like, I'm too good for that. I mean, of course we would never say that out loud. It feels ridiculous even saying it here, but we think it that way. We think that way sometimes, don't we? Someone else in the company will do that. I have too many meetings, or I have too many things to do. Someone else will. That's someone else's job. When you see an opportunity to serve, and we all do daily, we already have today, what is the voice in our head that prevents us from engaging, from choosing to serve? Maybe a challenging way to ask it is, what jobs do you see and secretly hope someone else will do? The heartbeat of Jesus' command is a downward trajectory to serve in the least favorable, least opportune, least glamorous, least public ways. That's the example Jesus sets. A downward trajectory to serve in the ways that most people would scoff at. John 13, I think, says it very on purpose. The meal had already begun, which means everyone in there would have been like, who's going to do it? Why is there not a slave here to do it? And then Jesus steps in. Where can you step in to serve? I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've heard people with like a genuine zeal and passion and like a faith-filled heart talking about like, I want to do great, big, amazing things for God. I want to see the world transformed. I want to change the world. I want to join Jesus in these spectacular ways, but then also be absolutely unwilling to do the small, hidden, menial things for him. You know, I heard someone say this week, perhaps if you want to see a mountain moved in your life, you just need to pick up a shovel. Serve in the little ways. Far too often we chase the incredible, but we're not willing to do the hidden. You know, I want to preach to thousands to change the world. I want to speak in front of these big rooms. It's like, okay, well, how about our kids? Would you go and teach some of our 4-year-olds? No, no, that's not me. How about a Bible study? No, not a Bible study. No, thank you. My professor, Bill McAlpine, used to say, if you're not fit to play second chair, you're not fit to play first. How often do we aspire to do the extraordinary for God and yet refuse to do the ordinary? Where's an ordinary place that you could serve? A little thing. I like to think if Jesus came in the flesh here today, like he walked in the flesh, that we would all be pretty quick to serve him. I like to think we'd follow some of the biblical examples, right? If Jesus walked in the flesh, sat down, that we would be like we'd smash an expensive perfume jar to wash his feet with it. I like to think that if Jesus came in the flesh and said, hey, I need some help to support this missional endeavor, that we'd be like, what do you need? You got it. You got it. I like to think that we would be just like the woman who like gets down and just like with our tears, we wash his feet saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. Like if Jesus in the flesh came here today, I like to think we would be very quick to serve him. no matter what. We wouldn't be like, I want to do the extraordinary for you. It's like, anything you ask, Lord Jesus, I'm in. I like to think most of us would embrace that posture. But what would happen if I said, prove it? Prove it. Because Jesus in his final words says this, what you want to do for me, I designate the people around you as the recipient. What I've done for you, do for the people around you. He says, Kyle, what you like to think you would do for me, I authorize those around you to receive it. So go and treat them the way you want to treat me. The hard ones, the ones that drive you up the wall. Kyle, go to the smelly places. The ones who betray you, the ones who lie, the ones who cut corners. And he says to all of us, go and love and serve the people around you the way that I have served you. The hard ones, the difficult ones, the ones who love different, the ones who act different, the ones who look different, the ones who vote different. Go and love and serve them the way you want to love and serve me. I designate them as the target for your service. Treat them that way. Which is to say, what I want to do for Jesus, Jesus says, go and do it for Chelsea and Charlotte and Alex and Eleanor and Samuel. Go and do it for your church family, Kyle. What you want to do for me, do for your church family. What you want to do for me, do for your friends. What you want to do for me, do for your colleagues. Do for your neighbor. And I struggle when I think through how many of those people that I just listed would feel like when I'm around them, I'm giving them the royal treatment that I would give Jesus. How often do we give that royal treatment to the people around us? Jesus says, go and serve the people around you the way that I have served you. Which means this, we release what we've received. We release what we receive. Freely you've been given, now go freely give it away. But here's what I know this morning. There are some people here who have never experienced the touch of Jesus. You've never received from him. You've never felt the gentleness of his presence. You don't know what it's like to have him serve you. Do you know that Jesus wants to speak to you today? That he wants to do for you what he did for the disciples in the upper room. He wants to serve you. Get down on his knees and wash away the parts of you that might stink. The parts of you that you might be embarrassed of. The parts of you that you want to hide from everyone else and pretend don't exist. And Jesus is like, no, let me serve you. Can I do this for you? Jesus wants to serve you today. He wants to wash you. He wants to save you. Would you let him? Oh, friend, let Jesus speak to you today. His hands are every bit as gentle today as they were in the upper room. And just like he didn't embarrass or out or betray Judas, he won't embarrass you. He's got love for you. Now, some people here do know the touch of Jesus. You do know what it's like to be served by him. Would you go and serve in his name today? Do you know who you can serve? Do you know what you can do? After washing their feet, Jesus is like, do you understand what I've done? Do you know what I've done for you? And I wonder how long it would have taken for them to realize the depths of what Jesus did in the upper room here. John 13 is a picture of the entire gospel. Philippians 2, in one of the earliest hymns we have, says this about Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Philippians 2 says Jesus gets off the throne, comes to the earth he created, lays aside the glory that surrounded him, and took on and embraced the posture of a servant to save humanity. And John 13 says he gets off his seat, lays aside his clothes, comes to embrace the position of a slave to serve and wash his disciples. John 13 is the picture of the gospel. And what Jesus did for the disciples in John 13, Jesus now offers all of humanity because of what he did on the cross. And he says to the world that he loves and that he created, I'm here to serve and save. And for those who know his touch, he says, now go and do likewise. And this is the white hot center of who we are as a church, worshiping and exalting the Jesus who left the glories of heaven to seek and to save us who were lost. And that's why there is never a month that First Alliance Church exists where we won't do communion. Because in this upper room where Jesus washed his disciples' feet, the other three gospels, instead of talking about Jesus washing the disciples' feet, they talk about what he did with some bread and with some wine, and what he instructed his followers to do. On this very same night, around the very same table that looks nothing like that painting, the Lord Jesus, he took some bread. And when he had given thanks for the bread, he broke it. And he said, this is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And so we remember the Jesus who washes our feet, and we remember the Jesus whose body was broken for us. So let's take together. In the same way, after supper, he took the cup. And he said to everyone there with their very clean and washed feet, he said, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and whenever you drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. So church family, let's proclaim the Lord's death. Objects of grace in communion, but objects of grace today, we're looking at a towel. Darrell Johnson said while preaching on this passage, we belong to a king whose scepter is a towel. The towel dramatizes his whole ministry. The towel reveals Jesus' understanding of kingship. The towel points to his saving action on our behalf. The towel now marks those who have experienced his grace. When, therefore, I am not able or not willing to take up the towel, it only means one thing. It means that it has been some time since I've allowed the king to be the king in my life. First Alliance Church, our king's scepter is a towel to serve, to seek, to save, and to wash. And he gives that scepter to us, a towel to serve those around us. So perhaps today, if you touch a towel to dry some dishes, to wash off an animal foot with all the mud, to wash off a part of your body. Whenever we may touch a towel today or this week, may we be reminded that this is the King's scepter and we serve those around us. Let's let King Jesus be the King of our lives. And may we all embrace the towel as the scepter of how we love the world around us, of how we serve those around us. That we would care for the people around us in the way we wish and long, and one day will care and serve King Jesus. May that be true for each of us today. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Kyle. So good. What a beautiful example our Savior has set for us. May we do likewise. Let's stand together and worship our humble King this morning. There is love that came